All right, let's talk about level 2 questions. Fortunately, you're pretty much going to see more of the same stuff. They might ask you a little bit harder aspects of different equations, or you might see just slightly more difficult word problems that might involve something like geometry. But other than that, it's not too different. Let's go over a few of these though, just to take a look. So technically, this type of question would be categorized under nonlinear functions instead of what you might imagine it being geometry. But the steps we're going to take are going to be similar to what we're going to do in geometry. So we're going to always draw a picture and then label what we're supposed to label and then create our equation. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to just jump into it. Oftentimes what I see happen is students, they might just go really quickly into it. Instead of drawing just a picture that might just take an extra 5 seconds or so. So here should be my picture. So I went ahead and drew my rectangle, and then I have my sides, x and x minus 15. And last, I just have to check out which formula is relevant for here. So they're asking for the area. They're telling us the area is 76, and then they give us the area formula on our equation sheet, or if you remember, it's just length times width. So that's just going to be x times x minus 15. Once I got to this point, I could solve for 76, so I could set this all equal to 76 now and solve for it. One tip I do have for you is once you have it down to variables, I want you just to open up Desmos and then just finish it off with Desmos. Okay, so here I have Desmos now. The tricky thing that's going to come about is that x can only mean one value here, but since this is x times x, that's going to give us x squared. So what I'll need to do is actually just understand that I'm going to get two answers. So first, you might see this. Make sure you always zoom out when you're dealing with squareds. That way you can see if there's another answer. So here I see two possible answers, either going to be -4 or 19. You might imagine -4 is not an option, but also wouldn't make sense to have a side that is length of -4. So 19 would be our current answer here, and looks like it's an option right here. Just note, always double check what they're asking you for, because what if they asked us for what is the width, or what is the length? You might get a different answer depending on what they're asking us for. If they ask us for the width, then the answer here would be 19 minus 15, and it would be 4. But they're not asking us for the width, they're just asking us for what is the value of x, and I found the value of x. So here is another question that's new. They're asking us for the minimum value. Now the minimum value is just the bottom of a parabola, so it'd be like the tip of it. Now here you could actually kind of see what this is. So we know x squared is just a parabola with the center 0, 0, and then they're just shifting it up 55. So it must be like this kind of shape, and it must be starting at 55. So I can do it like that. Of course, you can also just put it into Desmos. If I put it into Desmos, I see the exact same thing. The minimum point is just 0,55, which is just right there at the bottom. Next here, we have a question that asks us about our x-intercepts. Fortunately, we know what our x-intercepts are. It's just what happens when we have y set equal to 0. It's going to be where it crosses the x-axis. Clearly here we have the factored form, so we should know, based on our concepts, that this is going to cross the x-axis at -6 and +4. When you have a free response question like this that has multiple answers, you can pick either one. Either one would be accepted as a correct answer. We're going to have trickier word problems, so take a look at this one. It says the product of two positive integers are like whole numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, is 546. If the first integer is 11 greater than twice the second integer, what is the smaller of the two integers? So this is something we saw in the linear problem section. There's going to be a lot of word problems that use the same exact wording here. So we have 11 greater than twice the second integer. So let's just talk about what that means. That means that the first integer, I'm just going to call that x, equals 11 greater than, which is just 11 plus. So if it said 11 times, then I would multiply it. But it says 11 greater than, so it's just 11 plus twice the second integer. So it's going to be 2 times. I'm going to call that second integer y. So this is my first integer. And guess what? My second integer is just y. Right? Because x is going to be 11 plus 2 of this integer, which I decided to call y. So next, it looks like they're just asking us for the product of the two integers, so I'm just going to multiply these two together. And I can actually put this into Desmos and get my answer as well. So here we are. I'm just multiplying them together. I got y times 11 plus 2y. Of course, I could have done this with x. It really doesn't matter too much. The main difference is going to be that it's going to show me the answer on the y-axis instead of the x-axis. So here I have my full graph, and I see that I have two possible answers. I'm going to have either 0 at 0, 14, which here's my answer, or it's going to be 0, negative 19.5. Here's my other possible answer. As you probably noticed, they told me it was going to be positive and it was going to be an integer. This is neither positive nor an integer, so it's going to be 14 here. So here's a slightly different question. Unfortunately, the College Board had an error with this, so it's not really showing the correct answer choices. However, I'm still going to go over it, just kind of show you an important trick here. They say that Sarah opened a savings account at a bank. The table shows the exponential relationship between time t in years since Sarah opened the account and total amount d in dollars in the account. If Sarah made no additional deposits or withdrawals, which of the following equations best represents the relationship between t and d? So we need some sort of equation for this. I'm actually just going to use Desmos for this, and I'm going to use the regression feature that's built in. So here I have my table. I'm just going to press the button that says add regression. Once I do that, I see that it's going to give me linear regression. I don't want that. They told me exponential equation. I'm going to put exponential regression. Once I do that, I get the correct sort of value right here. So I know that I have y equals 670 times 0.1006x. So if there was an answer that looked like that, I would pick it. But this is our correct answer here. Now that said, I want to make a little note. I can do regressions as long as they're just using the simple base equations that we use in our concepts video. So for example, if I look at the quadratic equation, if I was trying to model something like that, then if you notice, this is always going to be in the standard form. This isn't going to give me it in the factored form. This is not going to give it to me in my vertex form. And then for my line equation, it's always going to give me y equals mx plus b. It's not going to give me ax plus bx equals c. And that said, I don't think we're ever going to have to use any of the other ones. It's really always going to be linear, quadratic, or exponential. And just make sure you know that if you are looking for an answer, it has to be in the base form. It can't be in any of the modified forms. All right, try out the rest of the questions. I want you to get lots of practice because this stuff is hard and they are going to put a lot of these questions. There's actually 34 practice problems from the College Board just based on this topic. So expect to see quite a bit of it on the SAT, and this is just for level 2. We'll go over level 3 next.